What happens when a massive trillion-dollar NATO armada goes head-to-head with a tiny, budget-conscious Air Force in a blind fight?
The result was not just a defeat, it was a massacre of expectations.
It left NATO sensors blind, their communications jammed, and their pilots.
Welcome to AirDom. Today, we are not looking at press releases or polished brochure figures.
We are conducting a deep dive forensic analysis of a simulated engagement that military insiders are calling the wake-up call of the century. We are analyzing how the Swedish philosophy of total independence has birthed a fighter aircraft that does not just compete.
This is the story of how the SAAB Gripen E proved that in modern warfare, agility of
To understand the gravity of this event, we must first strip away the marketing veneer and look at the raw engineering reality.
scenario was a high-intensity multinational war game designed to test the integrated air defense of Northern Europe.
The Blue Force, representing NATO, fielded a heavy lineup of 5th-generation stealth fighters and 4th-generation plus. Opposing them was the Red Force, spearheaded by the Swedish Air Force and their Gripen E squadrons. The expectation was a swift, clean victory for the heavyweights.
However, in the specific parameters of the simulation, the result was a chaotic disruption.
How did a lightweight, single-engine fighter achieve this?
The answer lies in a radical departure from the American design philosophy. The United States builds aircraft like the F-35.
Is incredibly effective, but it is also incredibly expensive and maintenance-heavy.
Sweden, knowing they could never match the US budget, chose a different path, known as electronic stealth.
Instead of deflecting radar waves physically, electronic stealth actively manipulates the electromagnetic spectrum around.
This digital cloaking assistance proved devastatingly effective.
The Gripen E, leveraging its advanced electronic warfare suite, became a ghost in the machine, able to see without being seen. This simulation highlighted a fundamental shift in aerial combat. While physical stealth remains important,
The Swedish trap has forced military strategists to reconsider fundamental assumptions.
join us next time on AirDom for more deep dives into the future of military aviation. Don't forget to subscribe.
The US philosophy is hide in the dark. The Swedish philosophy? Blind the enemy with a flashlight. The Gripen E does not care if you see it, because what you are seeing is a digital lie.
This is the power of the Arexis electronic warfare suite. Unlike old-school jamming that just creates static, Arexis utilizes gallium nitride transmitters to create a digital hall of mirrors.
It inhales enemy radar waves, twists the data, and spits it back out instantly. To an F-35 pilot, his scope does not show one Gripen. It shows 50.
Or it shows a target 40 miles away, when the real Gripen is actually right behind him, Meteor missile locked and ready.
It is not just stealth. It is electronic psychological warfare.
By the time the Blue Force sensors could burn through the jamming and find the real aircraft,
the Swedish pilots had already maneuvered into favorable firing positions, simulated the launch of their beyond visual range missiles.
It was a victory of electrons over geometry. Let us analyze the engineering architecture that allows for this lethality. The true genius of the Gripen.
In almost every other modern fighter, the flight-critical software is deeply intertwined with the tactical software.
this means that upgrading the tactical systems on an F-22 or an F-35 is a nightmare of certification and testing that can take years.
Sweden decoupled these systems. The Gripen E runs its flight systems on one core and its tactical systems on another, completely separate core.
This allows Swedish engineers to update the tactical software practically overnight, much like you would update an app on your smartphone.
In the context of the war game, this meant the Swedish forces could adapt their electronic warfare algorithms between sorties.
This tactical agility is a capability that the monolithic software structures of the superpowers simply cannot match in real time.
But here is the uncomfortable truth that terrifies logistics planners. The most advanced radar in the world is useless if the aircraft cannot even take off.
And this is where the Gripen humiliates the superpowers.
The NATO way of war is heavy. It requires pristine runways, massive hangars, specialized maintenance.
If you bomb the air bases, you ground the Air Force. Sweden, shaped by the Cold War threat of a massive Soviet invasion, designed the Gripen E to operate from the road not taken, literally. The doctrine is known as BAS 90. In the event of war, the Swedish Air Force does not stay at known bases.
The Gripen E is engineered with a ruggedized undercarriage and high-torque braking capabilities.
During the exercise, while simulated missile strikes took out the main runways used by the heavy NATO fighters.
And here is the kicker. A Gripen E can be refueled and rearmed in less than 10 minutes by a team of one tech.
Compare this to the sensitive, classified logistical tail required to keep a stealth fighter operational. The simulation proved that while a stealth fighter might be individually superior, a swarm of Gripens that can fight from anywhere turn around in minutes.
We must also address the kinetic performance.
Critics often point to the single engine of the Gripen as a weakness. This is a miscalculation of modern thermodynamics.
The Gripen E is powered by the General Electric F414G, a heavily modified version of the engine found in the SAAB.
When you combine this with the Gripen's lightweight composite construction and its aerodynamic Canard-Delta configuration,
The Canard-Delta design is critical here.
The small forewings, or canards, add lift and control airflow over the main delta wing. This allows the Gripen to In the close-range dogfights of the simulation, often referred to as the phone booth, the Gripen used this instability to its advantage as a knife fighter in a world of snipers, but it proved that if the sniper misses the first shot, the knife fighter wins. The NATO way of war is heavy. It requires pristine runways, massive hangars, specialized maintenance crews.
If you bomb the air bases, you ground the Air Force.
Sweden, shaped by the Cold War threat of a massive Soviet invasion, designed the Gripen E to operate from the road not taken, literally.
The doctrine is known as BAS 90. In the event of war, the Swedish Air Force does not stay at known bases. The Gripen E is engineered with a ruggedized undercarriage and high-torque braking capabilities.
The simulation proved that while a stealth fighter might be individually superior, a swarm of Gripens that can fight from anywhere. The most profound lesson from recent global events, causing anxiety in Washington and Brussels, is political.
It is the concept of sovereign freedom. When a nation buys an American fighter jet, they are not just buying a machine. They are entering a marriage. They are often restricted in where they can fly it, who can fix it, and what weapons they can integrate. The source codes are black boxes, accessible only to the manufacturer. The Gripen E represents the antithesis of this model. Sweden offers full technology transfer. They hand over the keys. For a recent simulation, this meant Swedish pilots were not restricted by export control software limitations. They utilized the full, uncapped potential of the aircraft's sensor fusion.
This independence allows the Gripen to integrate the Meteor missile, a ramjet-powered weapon, more deeply and effectively.
with a no-escape zone 3 times larger than standard missiles.
The radar, the missile, and the electronic warfare suite spoke the same language, unhindered.
This independence is a force multiplier. It means that in a real conflict, the user can modify threat libraries instantly.
They do not have to wait for a software patch to be emailed from across the Atlantic while the war is raging. This autonomy was the invisible ace up the sleeve during a recent Baltic exercise. NATO forces were fighting a static, doctrinal battle, while the Swedish unit fought a dynamic, adaptive war.
Rewriting the rules of engagement, hour by hour.
The implications of this are staggering for the global arms market and the future of alliances.
We are seeing a shift where smaller nations realize they don't need to be vassal states to superpowers for credible defense.
The Gripen E demonstrates that good enough is a fallacy. This is not a budget option. Apex Predator evolved for a specific environment. It suggests a nation can secure its skies without bankrupting its treasury
or compromising its foreign policy. This brings us to the theoretical edge that Airdom loves to explore.
What if this philosophy spreads? What if other mid-sized nations like Brazil, India, or South Korea?
It threatens the cohesion of alliances like NATO. The fear is that the Gripen proves you don't need an F-35 to be safe.
The recent exercise was a simulation, yes, but the data generated was real.
The radar tracks were real. The electronic jamming was real.
And the conclusion is undeniable. By prioritizing electronic dominance over physical stealth, operational
SAAB and Sweden have created a weapon system that punches terrifyingly above its weight class.
They have proven that in the 21st century, the most dangerous aircraft in the sky is not necessarily the biggest, nor the most.
The Gripen E stands ready, not just as a guardian of the Nordic skies, but as a challenger to the established hierarchy of military aviation.
It is a reminder that innovation often thrives best in the constraints of limited resources.
While the superpowers focused on building the ultimate do-it-all platform, Sweden focused on building the ultimate survivor.
And as the debriefing teams in Brussels are now realizing, in the unforgiving arena of modern air combat,
this analysis forces us to ask the hard questions about where defense technology is heading. Are we reaching the point of diminishing returns on stealth?
Is the future of air superiority defined by the ability to hack the enemy's sensors rather than hide from them?
The Swedish experiment suggests the answer is a resounding yes.
Thank you for joining this strategic deep dive on Airdom. We exist to analyze the strategies.
If you enjoyed this breakdown of the Gripen E's asymmetric capabilities, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Airdom.
Leave a comment below. In a head-to-head conflict, would you bet on the raw power of the superpower platform? Until next time, keep your eyes on the horizon.